Hey guys, tonight we're headed somewhere almost no one talks about. Not because it's a secret, but because, well, it's hard to believe it even happened. Imagine a place where people didn't just build around mountains, they relocated them. Not with dynamite or bulldozers, but with baskets. Woven ones. On foot, for years. You walk into this forgotten corner of the world just as the sun begins to soften behind the dust-heavy hills, and it already feels like you're breathing in someone else's memory. There's grit in your eyelashes, clay in the creases of your knuckles, and a wind that tastes faintly like the inside of a brick. Your boots, or maybe just your thick socks if you've given up on boots by now, press into a dirt path carved not by wheels but by souls. Hundreds of thousands of them over hundreds of years. You pass the occasional goat, tethered lazily to a post, chewing like it knows something you don't. And then you see it. The first ridge. Not quite a mountain, not quite a hill. More like the shoulder blade of the earth smoothed over by hands. This ridge wasn't here a few centuries ago. The locals carried it, basket by basket. Soil from a peak over there. Gestures vaguely at the horizon where the light bends weird, relocated right here. And no one really agreed on why. That's the best part. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and don't forget to tell me your location and what time it is where you are. Always fun to see who's listening from a train in Tokyo and who's drifting off in a tent somewhere near Wyoming. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step further into the dry breathing town, a place whose official name has changed so many times no one even bothers with it anymore. Everyone just calls it here, and that's not lazy, that's earned. Here is enough, when you've moved mountains to make it so. The homes are low, almost apologetically small, their mud walls stained with rain lines that never quite fade. You trail your fingers along the cracked plaster of one hut, its roof patched with old shirts, palm thatch and ambition, and realise it's not that these people were poor, it's that they were busy. You don't paint a window frame when your main street is a former mountain pass. Historians still argue whether this relocation project started as a defensive strategy or a stubborn collective art piece. One camp believes the villagers wanted to block invaders from an approaching direction. Another insists it was a fertility ritual, reshaping the landscape to mimic the goddess's curves. And a fringe theory? They were bored. Not with nothing to do, but with doing the same thing every generation. Moving a mountain is at least different. You duck under a rope line draped with drying herbs and socks and spot your first local. An old woman, woven deeper into her shawl than the fabric itself, rocking slowly on a stool that might also be her great-granddaughter. She lifts one eyebrow at you and points to the dirt. No words. Just a look that says, "Do you know where that dirt came from?" You don't. But you're about to. The soil beneath your feet once clung to a mountaintop 3 valleys west. It was peeled off like cake frosting and poured, chunk by crumb, into baskets made of bark and stubbornness. Then carried here. Often by children, by goats, by lovers on dates that lasted longer than some modern relationships. Every path you follow tonight will have once been a slope, every wall a former cliff, and every story you'll hear was whispered not in rooms, but between gasps on steep climbs. There's a popular local saying etched into the lintel of a half-collapsed grain hut. We moved the land until the land moved us. Poetic, right? And then, right when you're soaking in the warmth of that line, a bird poops near your elbow, because balance. Further in, you see the edge of what used to be a quarry, except here the quarry wasn't emptied for resources. It was emptied entirely. Gone. Just the memory of stone now. Local kids use it as a skate bowl. One of them tries to backflip off the side. You reflexively flinch. You pass another carving, this time into a flat rock near what you think is an abandoned tool shed. It reads, "Everything was too heavy, so we lifted it together." And somehow, that's funnier than it should be. Like, duh. But then again, you try convincing 30 people to spend a decade relocating an entire hilltop for reasons no one writes down. You'd need something to make people laugh. As night starts to lean in, the wind picks up, a hush that sounds suspiciously like applause. You hear the clink of tin spoons on clay bowls, kids being told to wash their hands in 3 different dialects, and someone playing a flute badly. A donkey hee-haws like it's finishing the solo. In this place, you start to understand something strange. Movement here isn't fast. It isn't loud. It's woven. Woven like the baskets. Woven like the rhythm of a story told at a dinner table where no one eats until the youngest explains where the dirt in the soup came from. You stretch your arms. There's a mild ache in your shoulders even though you haven't lifted anything yet. Maybe it's the air. Maybe it's the empathy. Or maybe it's the fact that you've just walked into a town where the earth has been lifted, resettled and repurposed so many times. It's not quite earth anymore. It's memory, with a little gravel. You follow the dirt path as it bends through low homes and heat-slowed animals, until it narrows into a trail not even goats seem thrilled to use. The air smells like dry hay, rusted iron, and the faint sweetness of cooked squash. Somewhere nearby, someone is grilling something that might be a root vegetable, or just very confident tofu. Ahead, you spot them. The backs, rows of them, bent, swaying gently, each one topped with a head wrapped in cloth or straw, moving like reeds in the wind. There are no machines here, just muscle memory passed down through generations. You keep walking, your steps hushed out of instinct, like entering a cathedral. Except this place smells more like armpits and dry soil than incense. Each figure you pass has a rhythm. Scoop, lift, step, dump, return, scoop, lift, step. You notice the age spread, some with hands that barely curl around their basket handles, others so old their shadows lag behind. A child no older than 6 passes you with a too large bundle of dirt on her back, cheeks puffed like she's holding in a complaint. But she doesn't drop it. She just adjusts, keeps going. It's not that the people here are strong, although obviously they are. It's that they're willing. They seem to know something most cities have forgotten. The earth can be shaped slowly if you show up daily. And when you stop, it remembers. You take a break at what must be the halfway point between 2 of the old peaks, now reduced to modest humps. There's a wooden pole with dozens of notches carved into it, markers of loads moved or maybe of days survived. Some of the notches are shallow, as if carved with a fingernail, others deep enough to hold a spoonful of rain. There's a fringe theory that the town's movement of mountains began as a spiritual punishment. Some historian in the 1800s claimed the villagers believed their valley was cursed, and only by physically reshaping it could they confess their collective guilt to the land. Another school of thought sees it as protest, a slow, silent rebellion against taxation that charged per acre. Shift the land, and you shift the math. Historians still argue whether these rituals were desperation or design, but either way, it worked. One elderly man stops beside you, rests his basket, and grins. His teeth are suspiciously nice, possibly carved from chalk. He points to the ridge behind you and rasps in a voice lined with sand. That one took 15 years. You both stare at it like it's a movie villain reformed. It's not tall, not dramatic. Just there. Soft, steady. Like a shoulder for the town to lean on. Quieter than the workers or the watchers. A dozen or so people, older, slower, sit in the shade of a canvas flap, sipping from mismatched mugs and murmuring to each other. They aren't gossiping, they're measuring, watching every step, every angle. Because here, even when you carry dirt, someone has to approve where you put it. One of them gestures for you to join. You accept, mostly because your legs agree before your pride can object. They hand you a cup of something that tastes like cinnamon mixed with regret. You smile anyway. We used to sing while we worked, one woman says, thumbing the edge of her cup. But people kept syncing their steps too well, got too efficient. The elders said it was dangerous to finish anything fast. You laugh. She doesn't. Apparently that rule stuck. Down below, a boy walks backwards up a slope with a basket on his chest, slipping once, then catching himself. A man behind him claps twice, and that's it. No yelling, no instructions, just rhythm control. The baskets themselves are minor miracles. Some are round, others oblong, almost heart-shaped, woven from palm, reed, and, when nothing else is available, unravelled fishing nets. You spot one lined with newspaper clippings from the 1970s, now faded into papery whispers. Each worker seems to know their basket like a dance partner. They adjust the grip, balance the weight, shift posture, all with the precision of someone who's dropped things before and learned from it. There's an unspoken choreography here. No one runs, no one stops. The movement flows like a single long sentence you're still reading. It's here that you spot the carving you won't forget. On a post beside the path, scorched into wood with something more stubborn than fire, are the words, "If it doesn't weigh something, it doesn't stay." At first it sounds poetic, then heavy, then fair, because this town remembers its weight, and it makes you remember yours. A group of school-aged kids passes by, playing a guessing game, something about how many handfuls of dirt it takes to fill a coffin. You raise an eyebrow. One kid answers 76, another says only one if it's the right handful. They high-five. You don't ask follow-up questions. You keep walking, following the backs. Always the backs. Curved, creased, determined. Some of them don't even look like they could straighten up fully anymore. You wonder what a chiropractor would say. Or a philosopher. One might suggest that bending under a load can be sacred. The other might recommend a back brace and a vacation. You pass a hand-dug trough filled with cool water and find yourself tempted to soak your hands. It's not clean, but it's honest. The water here hasn't been filtered for Instagram. It smells like moss and brass and effort. Eventually, you reach the edge of the current work zone, a mound that's only halfway up but already bigger than the average school gym. There are footprints along its slope, like some giant's toe choreography frozen in clay. Nearby, a teenage girl dumps her basket, pats the pile affectionately and whispers, "Almost there." Then she turns, walks back down the trail, and disappears into the heat shimmer. You sit and realize that everything you've seen today, every back, every stone, every groan, wasn't about finishing a job. It was about proving it could be done at all. You wake up, not from sleep, but from the days that comes when a town bends your idea of logic just enough to make dreams feel more believable than facts. The sun has drifted higher, though it still hides behind a veil of dust and morning cookfire smoke. You stretch your legs beside a terraced ledge overlooking what used to be a ravine. Now it's a cluster of homes and the bones of a market, stitched together with scrap tin and personality. This is the town that was built, not with blueprints or budgets, but with baskets. And when you step back into its uneven streets, that fact is everywhere. Walls lean just enough to make you nervous. Ceilings sag with the weight of stories older than anyone here. But still, this place stands. It thrives in a way modern cities can't comprehend. There's no symmetry, no zoning board, no urban planner with a drone and a clipboard. Just instinct, dirt, and tradition. One home is built entirely from clay dug out of the relocated ridge you saw yesterday. The family calls it Casa de la Tercera Colina, House of the Third Hill. The joke is there was no first or second hill. It's just that the word third sounds fancier. A thin man in a faded football jersey invites you in. Inside, the walls are etched with names, not graffiti, but a running tally of who helped carry which basket load used to build the place. 72 names, ages ranging from 9 to 79. You're handed a piece of charcoal and asked to sign too. You haven't lifted anything, but apparently curiosity counts. Historians still argue whether this style of communal architecture originated from necessity or ideology. Some suggest it was born out of scarcity, that when no one had enough, everyone had to build together. Others claim it was a deliberate anti-colonial gesture, a way to reclaim land not with weapons but with wheelbarrow-level defiance. Either way, it stuck. And there's something oddly comforting about knowing that every house here is a literal patchwork of borrowed, moved, and lovingly dropped materials. You exit through a crooked doorway and almost trip on a rock that's clearly been placed there on purpose. Obstacle test, a child explains, popping up from behind a stack of tyres. For character. You nod solemnly. You pass. In the main square, if you can call it a square when it's shaped more like a fried egg, there's a low stage where musicians are setting up what you guess might be instruments. A guitar with only 2 strings, a drum made from a plastic water tank, a flute that is almost definitely just a pipe with ambition. They're tuning, or possibly arguing. Either way, it sounds like jazz. Surrounding the square are more basket-built structures. A baker's stall, its walls reinforced with rice sacks. A cobbler's booth, his shelves made entirely of misfired bricks from a kiln that used to sit on top of a now-vanished hill. Even the school, half open air, rests on a plateau that was once the high point of the old mountain. Some of the town's children are standing in a line, barefoot, passing bricks hand to hand like a living conveyor belt. They're building a bench, not for resting, but for telling stories. Apparently, storytelling benches are a specific town feature. You must earn the right to sit on one by contributing to the build, or by telling a tale good enough to make someone laugh and cry. No pressure. You wander past a shrine near the edge of the square. It's tiny, just a triangle of rocks with candles around it, but it marks the first drop. The first basket of soil ever relocated from the original peak, back when this was all fields and fever. According to legend, the man who dumped that first load was dared to do it by his wife, who was tired of his complaining. That basket started it all, so naturally there's a candle-lit statue of her next to the shrine. The plaque reads, "She was right." You hear someone call out, and when you turn, an old woman is motioning for you to join her under a tarp-covered bench. You oblige, because at this point you've learned not to say no to anyone who looks like they know more than you, which is everyone. She offers you a folded leaf with something warm inside. Tastes like cinnamon and corn. Could be dessert, could be fuel. Hard to say. She tells you the town didn't always look like this, that at one point all the houses were temporary, like tents made of dreams and palm scraps. But people stayed, she says, because once you carry part of a mountain on your back, it starts to feel like home. You blink. That's heavy. She hands you another leaf parcel before you can say something dumb like, "Cool." In the distance, bells ring. Not church bells exactly, just metal plates strung with wire smacked in rhythm. It's the signal for meal shift change, but also a reminder. This town runs on time, even if it doesn't believe in clocks. As you walk again, you start to understand the deeper architecture of this place. It's not about buildings, it's about balance. Every stone moved, every pile placed, every ridge reshaped. It all speaks to a philosophy that's never written down, only practiced. If you want the land to hold you, you have to hold the land first. The streets are uneven, the walls wobble, but somehow the whole town feels steady, like something that knows its purpose and doesn't care if you understand it. And that steadiness, that quiet confidence in every shifted grain of soil, that's what holds you too. Because as strange as it sounds, there's something deeply relaxing about walking through a place where even gravity has been politely challenged. You find a spot near the edge of the square where a pile of unused basket straps sits in the sun. You sit on them. They squeak. Above you, a flag, made of stitched-together shirts and potato sacks, flutters proudly. No symbols, just dust and effort. And under that humble, swaying banner you realise this town wasn't just built, it built itself. You leave the square behind with a belly full of cinnamon leaf mystery and a heart heavier than expected. It's not sadness, it's weight, the same kind that settles in your chest after you see someone lift something too big for them and succeed anyway. The path you follow now dips between two ridges, both of which were once much taller, according to a sign nailed into a tree that no longer lives. The sign reads, "Mind the gap, it used to be more mountain." The slope is gentle, like someone sanded the terrain down with love and a few thousand bruised toes. And coming up the path, you hear the clop of hooves, steady, proud and wearing hats. Yes, hats. Mules here are not only workers, they are mascots. Decorated with ribbons, bells, and what can only be described as tiny straw fedoras, they carry baskets with far more grace than you'd think possible from an animal that usually looks annoyed by life. These mules don't just tolerate the town's mission, they join it. Each one has a name carved into a wooden tag around its neck. Obispo, Mango, Maria Luisa. One is named Kevin, which breaks the streak, but you respect it. Historians still argue whether the mules were introduced out of necessity or respect. Some records show they arrived during the drought years, when human endurance wasn't enough. Others say the animals simply wandered in, watched the villagers sweat and decided to help. It's the kind of story local elders nod at with serious faces but never confirm. A girl with bright eyes and one missing shoe walks beside the tallest mule, patting its side every few steps. She tells you this one carried half a ridge last winter. You raise an eyebrow. She nods with absolute certainty, then adds, "It also ate my science homework." You thank her. She shrugs. He was right to do it. You step aside to let the mule train pass. The dust they kick up lingers in the air like powdered history. When it clears, you spot a cart at the back, handmade, wobbling slightly, and pulled by 3 boys instead of a donkey. Inside are smaller baskets, each with a rock no bigger than a fist. "Training weights," one says proudly, "for rookies." This is how they learn. The town doesn't just use mules for muscle, it uses myth. One family you pass has painted murals of famous animals on the side of their home, each one rendered in cartoonish glory. There's Jacinto the goat, who once headbutted a landslide out of the way. Cuca the chicken, who laid eggs exclusively on sacred soil. And of course Carlos the mule, who, if the story is to be believed, climbed an incline so steep even the clouds reconsidered. You walk beside a man pushing a wheelbarrow full of sweet potatoes. He whistles a tune you can't place. He says his father helped move the east slope when he was a boy, and that he now walks it every day. To remember the incline. You nod, though your calves protest even thinking about it. Midway up the path you pass a shrine made of bicycle parts and wine bottles. A candle flickers beside a plaque that reads, "To the mule that wouldn't move." Apparently, the animal sat down mid-haul and refused to go any further, so the townspeople moved around it, rerouted the entire path, out of respect, or stubbornness, or both. There's a fringe theory that the animals weren't merely helpers, but revered as geomancers, creatures who could feel the lay of the land better than humans ever could. Some swear the most successful paths were chosen not by maps, but by whichever direction the mule leaned while scratching its flank. You laugh, then realise you're not entirely sure that's a joke. At the top of the slope you reach a lookout point. Below you is a quilt of rooftops, none of them matching, all of them meaningful. The sun catches on 100 surfaces. Scrap metal, wet clay, old tarps, satellite dishes used as weather vanes. You sit beside a teen sketching the landscape in charcoal. Her notebook is filled with renderings of moved hills and basket diagrams. One drawing shows a mule with wings. You compliment it. She doesn't look up. That's Kevin. He hasn't earned them yet. Respect. To your left, a mule trots by with no rider, just a single basket of loose gravel on its back. When it reaches a marked spot, it stops, waits. A boy appears moments later with a shovel. The mule blinks once, satisfied, and continues on. You whisper, "Who's training who?" But no one answers. From up here, the whole town looks like a conversation, between earth and effort, between animal and human, between we can't and let's try anyway. And that conversation doesn't seem close to ending. You make your way down a side path used for transporting basket materials, strips of dried reed, twine, and surprisingly phone chargers. One boy passes carrying a whole tangle of them. "Trade cables for basket straps," he explains. "Technology for tradition, 1-to-1. You pass a small stone workshop where baskets are being repaired. The craftsman waves you in and shows you how to check for stress fractures, tiny splits in the weave that can collapse under weight. Same with people, he says, but baskets are easier to fix. A whistle blows in the distance, sharp and brief. Break time. The trail clears. You sit down on a half-finished pile of red clay and breathe in the town's rhythm. It's not peaceful exactly, but it is consistent. And in that, there's a kind of peace. Because when you live in a place that moves mountains one basket at a time, you don't rush. You repeat. You continue down the winding trail, the heat now folded gently into the air like a warm towel over your shoulders. Dust clings to your ankles, soft as flour. You're not tired yet, but your muscles are listening now, a little more alert, as if they know that, around here, even walking might end with someone handing you a shovel. The slope levels out just in time for you to catch your breath, and catch sight of a low hill rising awkwardly from the centre of the valley, like a bump under a bedsheet. This, you're told, used to be one of the major peaks in the region. Used to be. Now it's just the lump. There's no official name. It changes every decade, depending on who's telling the story. Some call it Old Shoulders, others the Lost Tooth. A local boy insists it's Mount Leftover. His friend insists it's that pile we got bored with. What everyone agrees on, though, is that it didn't start here. Historians still argue whether the lump was moved for defensive purposes or simply because it was in the way of better sunsets. One camp claims it blocked the breeze that cooled the village at night. Another believes the villagers misread a prophecy, mistaking "lift your burdens" for "relocate that hill." Honestly, same result. You walk along the base of it, where wildflowers now grow between chunks of rock. A hand-painted sign reads, "Climb gently. This hill remembers being taller." You do as it says. The climb isn't difficult, more of a wide staircase made by accident. You pass pieces of rebar, old buckets, a sandal. There's no plaque, no visitor's centre, no laminated map. Just layers of effort, barely organised, like the world's largest accidental sculpture. About halfway up, a series of stacked stones catches your eye. They're deliberately placed, balanced in impossible ways. Someone tells you it's the archive, not of stories, of loads. Each stack represents a family that moved soil from the original peak. If the rocks don't fall, the story holds, and they're still standing. At the top, the view isn't grand, but it feels grand. You see the town from a different angle now, less a sprawl, more a patchwork. You see paths that used to be streams. You see rooftops made from flattened oil drums. You even spot a basketball court that clearly used to be a burial site, given the uneasy spacing of the lines. But most of all, you see the void, the space where the original peak used to be. It's just a depression in the land now, like someone took a bite out of the valley. The locals call it La Boca, the mouth, and if you ask them what it's saying, they'll just shrug and say, it's full. A man nearby is sketching the scene in a notepad. You ask him how long the mountain took to move. He taps his pencil 3 times before replying, 37 years, 2 generations, 1 miracle. Then he flips to a page showing the original peak, tall and looming. You pause. It's impressive, intimidating even, and suddenly you realise something. No one here talks about what they moved, only how. There's a quirky theory circulating among the younger villagers that the original mountain had no real name, just a shape. And once that shape was gone, the name was too. So now, they give each new hill a temporary name until it's moved again. The lump, the tired step, the once before rain. It's both hilarious and heartbreakingly honest. Nothing here is sacred because everything is sacred. As you descend the opposite side, you pass a man humming to himself while carrying a small bag of pebbles. You offer to help. He shakes his head and says, "I've got this part. The mountain carried me when I was smaller." You don't argue with logic like that. Closer to the base, you come upon what seems like a picnic. 3 women sitting on low stools, peeling vegetables over a patch of cloth. Their knives are dull, but their conversation is sharp. They're discussing which part of the old mountain had the best soil for tomatoes. One insists it was the north slope. Too many rocks, but great drainage. Another says the east face grew onions so well they started crying before harvest. The third just chuckles and says, "The best soil is wherever you plant." Touché. They offer you a slice of pickled something. You eat it without asking what it is. It's sour, crunchy, and weirdly energizing. Probably volcanic in origin. Further down the trail you hear children playing what can only be described as basketball, but also geology. Instead of a ball, they're tossing small stones into woven buckets hung from trees. Every time they score, they shout the name of a relocated landmark. South Ridge, Red Tooth, Trash Pit Hill. The last one gets the most cheers. The game is fast, chaotic, and looks slightly illegal. You want to play. You don't. You find a seat near a shaded wall painted with an enormous mural. Half history, half fever dream. It shows the old mountain being dismantled, each basket carried by a creature. People, mules, spirits, snakes, a giant turtle wearing sandals. At the bottom, in tiny print, truth is heavy. but not always literal. You lean your head back and close your eyes for a second. The wind shifts, and for a moment you swear you hear it say, "Keep going." The wind's voice fades, but the feeling lingers. You rise, brush the dust from your legs, and continue on. The trail curves again, but this time it doesn't lead to another pile of soil or basket crew. This time it leads to sky. Well, not actual sky. That would be dramatic. But sky dust. A low stretch of land where the air turns cloudy, not with storm, but with fine, slow-moving particles that float like pollen with purpose. This is where they sift the sky. At first, you think it's just dust. Random, lazy, suspended in afternoon light. But as you approach, you realize it's organized. This is a sorting zone, but for air, not soil. You step under a loose canopy of linen sheets hung between wooden frames. They flutter lazily in the breeze. Beneath them, the dust is caught and slowed, like time itself being sifted through gauze. A woman in a wide hat stands nearby, holding what looks like a giant butterfly net. She scoops the dust mid-air, flips it into a pan and squints. "North Slope," she mutters, before discarding it into a basket labelled too coarse. You're about to ask what's going on when a boy with chalk on his cheeks whispers, "They're reading the dirt." Naturally. Turns out the town has a long tradition of sky sifting. The dust in the air carries the memory of where it came from. Slope dust moves one way, river dust moves another, and if you're patient enough, you can tell exactly which piece of the mountain blew through the valley that morning. Historians still argue whether this was ever truly useful, or if it's just poetic science, the kind that makes elders feel wise and children feel important. A few scholars in the 1960s attempted to analyse the dust. One concluded it was 85% ordinary soil. Another claimed it contained psychogeographic memory. That second scholar now teaches poetry. You move deeper into the linen labyrinth where kids with chalkboards jot down which direction the breeze shifts every 10 minutes. They call it forecasting. Not for weather, but for moods. Apparently east breeze dust makes people hungry. South breeze dust makes goats unusually affectionate. West, that's for secrets. You breathe it in, just a little, and wait. No goat. A girl no older than 8 points to your forehead and says, "You've got mountain freckles." You thank her. She frowns. That's not a compliment. Touché again. You sit beside a large wooden frame where two teens are combing dust through overlapping screens, their motions synchronized like a meditative ritual. Each layer captures a finer grade, what they call grain memory. The finest siftings are stored in sealed jars labelled with years, not places. Apparently 1998 dust is prized for its emotional complexity. You want to laugh, but you don't, because somehow it feels right. The jars are kept in what they call the dust library, a small adobe structure with shelves carved into its walls. Inside it's cooler, darker, and smells like cinnamon and rust. You run your fingers along one jar. The label reads April 12th, 2003, mood defiant, wind east-northeast, sifted by Julio and friends. There's something oddly sacred about it, like you're touching someone else's breath long after they've exhaled. You ask a local elder what they do with all this sifted dust. She shrugs. Mostly argue about it. Same. There's a fringe belief that the dust holds omens, that if sifted at the right time, it can predict love, storms, or stubborn mules. You're told of a man who once claimed to sift the future from 3 fistfuls of ridge dust. He said it told him to plant beans instead of corn. He ended up growing both, just to be safe. The wind picks up briefly, tossing the linen sheets into dance. The kids cheer like it's a parade. One boy catches a fresh gust in a sack and runs off, yelling something about a trade with the shoemaker. You don't ask. In the middle of the sifting field stands a pole with dozens of hanging threads. Each thread has a small pouch tied to it, filled with dirt from a different location. As the wind blows, each pouch swings at a slightly different angle. A woman marks the motion in a notebook. You ask what she's studying. She says, "The hesitation." You blink. She explains that hesitation is what tells you the truth. When dust resists the wind, just for a moment, That's when it reveals its story. Where it came from, what it meant, what it wants. You pretend to understand. By now the dust has coated your eyelashes. You feel like a dessert. But oddly, you don't mind. You've grown used to it, like how background noise becomes music if you listen long enough. This dust, sifted and sacred, is the town's breath, and breathing it in feels like being invited to something soft and ancient and slightly ridiculous. One boy runs past shouting, "I caught a 1991 gust." He is celebrated like a hero. You move to the edge of the sifting field, where the air clears slightly. A goat wanders by, chewing on a page torn from someone's weather journal. You salute it. It ignores you. Just as you're about to leave, someone offers you a small vial of dust as a souvenir. The label reads, "Hilltop, Western Shoulder, sweet aftertaste, possible lies." You tuck it into your pocket, because even if the dust doesn't remember you, you're going to remember the dust. You leave the dust fields behind, still blinking tiny flecks of ancient mountain from your eyelashes. Your shoes, or let's be honest, your socks, are completely chalked over now. Their colour replaced by the valley's own shade of light regret beige. The sky above stretches wide, indifferent, and quietly amused. You're told the next route is shorter by months. A bold claim, and one that doesn't quite make sense until you find yourself standing at the mouth of what was once the longest mountain road in the region. Now, it's the world's heaviest shortcut. There's no sign, no ceremonial gate, no carved plaque proclaiming greatness. Just two woven baskets, oversized, tilted outward, and filled to the brim with symbolic rocks. One is labelled before, the other after. You walk between them, and suddenly the air shifts. This path, this thick, stubborn, half-erased road, used to take weeks, even months to traverse in the rainy season. Wagons broke, animals quit, people cried. A few just turned around and never came back. Then one day, someone asked, "What if we didn't go around the mountain? What if we moved it?" You hear laughter in your head, maybe from the past, maybe from common sense. And yet, here you are. It started with a few families, digging, hauling, dropping basket after basket into the void left behind, each load thrown down with more frustration than strategy. But slowly, the earth adjusted. The path straightened. The detour became a corridor, and what used to take 90 days could now be walked in 2, assuming you were willing to sweat. Historians still argue whether this shortcut was truly faster, since the work took decades. Some say it was an act of generational generosity. Others claim it was a collective illusion. People needed something to fix, even if that something was a mountain. One local theory suggests the path was actually a revenge project, because the original road charged tolls in the 1800s. Petty infrastructure at its finest. You begin your walk. The road is uneven, not badly built, just built honestly. Every stone you step over has been carried here on someone's back, literally. Some parts are paved with cobblestones taken from the mountain's shin, their word, not yours. Others with flattened baskets, preserved in mud and hardened by time. Every few hundred feet, there's a marker. Not a sign, those get stolen. Just a painted rock, each one with a number and a name. Some say, load 3441 Mateo. Others simply read, "This one hurt." At one bend, you come across a carved bench shaped like a foot. A sign above it reads, "Sit here if your legs betrayed you." You do. A teen nearby is painting small arrows onto stones and setting them along the edge of the path. You ask him why. He says, "So the wind doesn't forget where we're going." You nod. You have no idea what that means. Further along, you find a shaded grove with the remains of a very, very old wagon, half buried in the earth, its wheels split like dried fruit. Someone spray-painted a crown on it and scrawled, "King of the Detour, died trying." Respect. You reach a flat stretch where several locals have gathered for lunch, sitting cross-legged on cloth mats, trading soup and gossip. One man is grilling something over a small flame. The smell is heavenly. You ask what it is. He replies, "Hope and yam." You laugh. He doesn't. You back away. A woman offers you a drink from a shared jug. It tastes like mint, lemon and mischief. She tells you her grandmother helped carry the baskets that filled this section of the shortcut. Her grandmother had bad knees and worse vision. But, she says proudly, she hated the long way. You're starting to see a pattern. The shortcut may not have made things easier, but it felt better, more direct, more intentional. And that, apparently, was the point. You keep walking. The terrain changes subtly as you go. Stone gives way to packed clay, then back to gravel, then to shards of what may have once been roof tiles. Apparently, when the town rebuilt part of its northern ridge, it sacrificed several rooftops in the process. They became part of the road, and in that way the road remembers the sky. Another marker catches your eye, a smooth slate with the words, "To walk forward is to carry backward." You whisper it once, just to see how it tastes. Feels a little like dried mango and late homework. At one point, you have to duck under a fallen tree that no one's bothered to move. It's part of the route now, so accepted that someone's actually installed a curtain across it for shade. You pull it aside, like you're entering a room. It smells like sweat, pine, and stories. As you near the shortcut's end, a small structure looms, half mud, half stone, with a roof made of old satellite dishes. Inside, a chalkboard lists shortcut travel times for various villagers. It's not about competition, it's about legacy. One entry reads, Rosa, 1 hour 15 minutes carrying fresh bread. Another says, David, 3 hours, carrying heartbreak. Still counts. Still counts. You exit the shortcut, passing through 2 more baskets, this time labelled Remember and Forget. You're not sure which one you belong in, so you keep walking. Because shortcuts here aren't about speed. They're about proving that even the long way can be shortened if you care enough to carry the road with you. You reach the far end of the shortcut expecting quiet. Instead you hear laughter, shrieking, joyous, slightly chaotic laughter. A blur of motion flashes past your right shoulder. A child no older than 10 hauling a basket half her size, trailed by another kid waving a stick like a conductor's baton. They zigzag between 2 trees, dodge a sleeping dog, and collapse in a tangle of limbs and giggles near a dirt pile. Welcome to the children with shovels sector. That's not what the locals call it, but they should. This part of the town hums with the sound of smaller shovels hitting softer earth. Here the baskets are bite-sized, the tools handmade from wood scraps, and the ambition colossal. At first glance it looks like they're playing, which to be fair, they are. But also, they're learning, they're contributing, they're reenacting the rituals of their parents, and their parents' parents, one tiny scoop at a time. A girl in a faded Spider-Man shirt informs you gravely that she is Chief of Soil Logistics. Her crew consists of 2 boys, twins, 1 goat, and a wheelbarrow missing its wheel. You salute her. She accepts. A few kids have organised a basket relay. The rules are vague, the path isn't marked. There may or may not be a system of rewards involving sweet potatoes. But spirits are high, the baskets are flying, and the dirt is flowing in a direction that feels productive. Historians still argue whether the tradition of child labour in this town was ever formalised. Some say it emerged out of necessity during the famine years, when even the smallest hands were needed. Others believe it began as a form of play ritual mimicry, kids copying what they saw until their pretend became real. There's even a fringe theory that claims children are more attuned to mountain memory, and that their baskets weigh less, not because of size, but because of permission. You watch a boy carefully stack 3 pebbles on the side of the path, adjust one by half an inch, then step back and admire it like a sculptor. He gives it a name, the Tower of Definitely Not Falling, and promptly walks away. It falls, immediately. A girl nearby claps approvingly. That means it's done. The town has long embraced a culture of generational passing, not just of knowledge, but of burden. It's said that when a child turns 5, they're given a miniature basket and a task. Move a single scoop of soil from the family pile to the community hill. This first carry is celebrated. There's cake, sometimes confetti, definitely drama. You're shown a wooden board hung on a garden wall engraved with names and the dates of their first carries. Each name has a small symbol beside it. usually drawn by the kid themselves. Stars, donkeys, weird suns with angry eyebrows. One entry just has the word why. Relatable. You move through the children's sector slowly. They don't rush, so neither do you. They've built a miniature hill near the edge of the clearing. A training mountain. It's no taller than your knee, but it's treated with reverence. Kids carry their dirt here like offerings. Some bow. Others give pep talks to their baskets. A toddler dumps a handful of gravel with a triumphant scream, then runs a victory lap around a tree. This is how it starts. There's a mural nearby, painted at child height, of stick figures carrying baskets up a rainbow. At the top is a smiling sun with a moustache. It's labelled Mountain Grandpa. You can't tell if it's religious or just adorable. A woman tending a nearby garden chuckles when you ask. We don't correct them, she says. They make better stories. You notice that some of the kids have marked their paths with strings tied between sticks, little basket lanes to stay in. To practice precision, one says. Another adds, and to keep Tommy out. He cheats. Tommy waves cheerfully from across the path. He's definitely cheating. A group of children invite you to help with their latest project, reshaping a bump of land into the best slope ever. You accept, handed a shovel small enough to spread jam with. You dig. It's oddly satisfying. The soil is loose. The goals are vague. The pressure is non-existent. And yet, you feel proud when your scoop lands where it was supposed to. One boy takes your picture with a boxy old camera, says you're now part of the official contributors. You ask where the photos go. He shrugs, mostly into the fire, but it's the thought. You respect the commitment. As break time begins, the kids gather under a stretched tarp for snacks. Roasted corn, spicy peanuts, something unidentifiable but purple. They talk about rocks like adults talk about politics. One child insists quartz is overrated. Another calls him a fraud. It escalates quickly, ends in a thumb war. You sit nearby, sipping a drink handed to you without warning. It's warm, possibly tea, possibly melted candy. As the kids start drifting back to their tasks, one girl offers you a piece of chalk. To mark your step, she says, you write your name on a flat stone near the training hill. Then, without really planning to, you draw a basket. Just a small one, balanced on a hill made of other hills. A goat eats it 30 seconds later. But in this town, that probably means it's sacred now. You stand, stretch, and take one last look at the training grounds. The children are back at it, bending, scooping, giggling, slipping, trying again. Because here, the weight of the mountain doesn't start as a burden. It starts as a game. And somehow, that makes all the difference. You step away from the training grounds, still smiling, still brushing purple snack residue from your hands. The laughter fades behind you, replaced by a hush that grows with every footstep. Not silence, never silence here, but something more ceremonial. Slower, story-soaked. You're headed toward the heart of the myth. The locals call it many names, La Sonrisa del Barro, El Rey de Paja, but you'll hear it whispered most often as the legend of the Straw King. You follow a narrow walkway lined with stones painted gold. Not real gold, obviously. It flakes off if you stare at it too hard. But the shimmer gives you just enough illusion to believe something regal waits ahead. And then you see him. He's not real, of course, just a statue. Sort of. A bundle of straw arranged like a man, seated on a throne made from broken wheelbarrows and flattened baskets. His head is a sack, tied with twine. His feet are mismatched boots. One of them has a flower growing out of it. The sign next to him reads, "Do not bow, he wouldn't." Legend has it, the Straw King was never a king at all. Just a particularly loud worker named Elias who made a joke during one of the longest soil-hauling days in recorded village memory. As the story goes, the sun had been punishing, the baskets extra heavy, and tensions were high. Someone shouted, "We need a leader!" And Elias, without missing a beat, stuck a bundle of straw in his shirt, jammed a sack on his head, and declared, "Then let it be me." Everyone laughed, and kept hauling. But from that day forward, whenever morale dipped, someone would invoke the Straw King. His story grew. He was brave, lazy, wise, foolish. He once lifted a hill with one hand. He once napped for an entire season and woke up just in time to give advice no one asked for. Historians still argue whether the legend of the Straw King originated from one man or a dozen different jokers stitched into one figure over time. Some say it was a way to keep spirits high during impossible workloads. Others believe it was a hidden rebellion, mocking the idea of kingship altogether, and the fringe theory that he was a real person, but only appeared to those who truly needed him, usually while dehydrated. The statue isn't alone. Around him are offerings. A single muddy boot, a drawing of a goat wearing a crown, a child's basket filled with sunflower seeds, someone's half-eaten sandwich with a note that says, "You deserve it, boss." You sit on a nearby stone bench and listen. That's when you hear the laughter. Not real laughter. Echo laughter. Worn into the walls of the small shrine that wraps around this courtyard. It's in the mural strokes, in the rustle of the straw throne, in the wind that bounces off each cracked tile. They say the Straw King never gave orders, only made observations. Like, this mountain isn't heavy, it's just shy. If the path curves, follow it. If it bites, compliment it. Work slower, that way you'll finish before you quit. The sayings are ridiculous, and yet, you spot a faded piece of cloth tied to the back of the throne. Someone scribbled, "He told me to take a nap." I did. It worked. You wander into the adjacent structure, half museum, half chaos. Inside are dozens of odd items, all allegedly blessed by the Straw King. A spoon missing its handle, a lopsided hat, a piece of cheese wrapped in plastic that no one dares move. One wall is filled with drawings from kids, crayon versions of the Straw King in impossible scenarios, riding a dolphin, arm wrestling a cloud, teaching a mule to paint. You ask the caretaker, a man dressed entirely in beige, if the Straw King ever actually helped move the mountain. He shrugs. He made us laugh. That's heavier than most things. Outside, a tour group of 3 goats and their handler circle the statue. The goats seem unimpressed. The handler whispers something reverently into the air. You can't make it out. Might have been a joke. Might have been thanks. The sun shifts slightly, casting a halo over the throne's frayed crown. For just a second, he looks real. You shake your head. But still, you leave a small offering on the pile. Nothing big, just a pebble, one you found earlier. It's not special, but you carried it, and that seems to count. As you walk away, someone passes you, whispering, "He said to wear the ridiculous hat, so I did. Now I'm mayor." You nod politely. In this town, that probably is how you become mayor. You look back once, just to check. The throne hasn't moved, but the wind seems to bow just slightly in his direction. You leave the Straw King's court with a strange sense of levity, like you've been told a joke that's still unfolding in your head. You walk past the last stone bench, down a slope lined with tiny wind chimes made from old spoons and broken shoe buckles. They jingle as you pass, a clumsy but heartfelt symphony. And then, like stepping out of myth and straight into rush hour, you arrive at the market that ate a mountain. It's chaotic, beautifully so. You're standing on ground that 200 years ago sat at the summit of a neighbouring peak. Every stone, every patch of dirt, every strangely tilted stall, carried basket by basket to this very spot. Where there was once a dry summit under open sky, now there are mangoes and boot repairs and people arguing about the price of cabbage. At first, you don't believe it. You figure the stories were exaggerated. But then a teenager selling pickled cactus tells you, "Yeah, this used to be the north face. Look, this pepper stand? That's the old avalanche zone." You nod as if that makes any sense at all. The stalls are organised in loosely defined sections. Fruit near the entrance, textiles by the old bell pole, tools and scrap in a shaded corner that smells like rust and sweet oil. There's even a section devoted to questionable goods, things you probably shouldn't eat, touch, or ask too many questions about. It's very popular. You pass a man loudly advertising pre-softened shoes and another selling rocks with faces painted on them. One claims to predict the future, the other just frowns at you. You keep walking. Historians still argue whether the market was a deliberate relocation or simply happened by momentum. One theory claims the townspeople originally intended to build a garden here. Another insists it was punishment, The mountain soil was cursed and no one wanted to live on it. And then there's the fringe theory that the mountain itself demanded commerce. You don't know which to believe. You watch a woman haggle over the price of goat cheese while balancing a baby in one arm and an entire watermelon in the other. A teenage boy nearby is shouting prices in multiple accents. Possibly for fun, possibly because it works. A sign above a fruit stall reads, "Half the price, twice the climb." You pause at a spice vendor's table where the mounds of colour are so vivid they look almost unreal. Deep orange, blood red, pollen yellow. The vendor tells you some of these spices were grown in soil from the sunside slope, where morning light once hit the rocks so directly the earth itself warmed the roots with gossip. You buy a pinch of something, probably cinnamon, might be confidence. Nearby, a small group of musicians play an upbeat tune using a guitar made from an oil can, and a drum that's definitely just an old soup pot. It works. People tap their feet. A baby dances like she's been paid to. An old man tips his hat, even though no one asked him to. The rhythm fills the air with something you didn't realize you missed. Momentum. You see the kids again, some from the basket games earlier, now running errands. One delivers a note, another barters for 3 limes and a charm shaped like a tooth. They look like messengers in training. You wonder how long until they're market veterans. There's a mural on one of the walls made from scraps of fabric, patches sewn together like a quilt, each square a different vendor's story. One features a tomato with wings, another shows a basket floating like a balloon. In the corner, someone stitched the words, "We planted the soil before we planted the seeds." You sit beneath the mural and listen. Behind you, someone shouts about a sale on something called mountain salt. You turn and see a man holding up a jar of greyish powder. You ask what makes it mountain salt. He shrugs. Came from high up, probably. Good enough. You pass a booth selling wooden trinkets shaped like miniature hills. Each one has a basket carved into its side. For remembering, the vendor says. You pick one up. It feels heavier than it should. You buy it anyway. Toward the back of the market, things slow down. Fewer crowds, more space. Here, the ground dips slightly. An old fault line, maybe. Or just the soft belly of the relocated peak. It's where the oldest stalls are, the ones no one moves. The bread seller, the tailor who only mends items with stories, the man who exchanges moods in jars for small coins. You don't ask how that last one works. One of the bread sellers hands you a sample. It's sweet and dense, and apparently baked in an oven, built from bricks of peak stone. You compliment it. She shrugs. It tastes better if the mountain helped. You nod. Of course it does. There's one final stall that catches your attention. It sells nothing. Just a wooden table covered in dust with a single sign. This stall sold gravity. We're out. You chuckle. But also, fair. Because walking through this market, you realize the weight of the mountain never truly left. It was just redistributed, turned into stalls and shoes woven into spice jars baked into bread. This isn't just a market. It's a memory of effort. Monetized. You leave with a full stomach, a heavier pocket, and the very real feeling that somewhere deep down, you've just bought a small piece of a mountain. You leave the market by its unmarked north exit, a path worn smooth by souls and carts and people with places to be. No gate, no fanfare, just the steady rhythm of leaving. And the moment you step through, you notice something unsettling. There's less. Not less town, less ground. The earth feels hollow. You're standing at the edge of the most peculiar tradition in this peculiar place. How to vanish a hill. Before you is a slope, or rather, the idea of a slope. A barely there rise that decades ago was a proud little bump in the terrain. Nothing monumental, just a gentle lift in the land. Enough to change how the wind moved and where kids dared each other to roll down during festivals. Now, it's disappearing. Not being destroyed, not being levelled, just removed. Gently, basket by basket. The locals call it editing. You watch a small crew at work. 4 people in slow motion, their baskets light, their pace relaxed, like they're unbuilding a sandcastle one scoop at a time. There's no urgency, no machinery, just intent. You ask why. A man with a bright red scarf shrugs. didn't like how it blocked the sunrise. Simple as that. Historians still argue whether the hill was ever truly natural. Some maps show it, some don't. A few believe it was a burial mound. Others say it grew when a storm years ago dumped sediment into the valley, and no one corrected it. The fringe theory, that the hill never existed until someone claimed it did, and now they're removing it to preserve the lie. You walk the perimeter of the fading hill. The ground is soft, slightly uneven, like dough that's been rolled and rolled until it's forgotten it was ever meant to rise. There are footprints, shovel marks, and in one spot, a tiny flag with a picture of a chicken on it. No one explains. There's a logbook nearby, kept under a tarp and weighted with a wrench, tracking the rate of removal. It's surprisingly detailed. It lists date, load size, direction of transfer, and in one case, emotional state. June 4th, 2 scoops, northeast. Feeling uncertain. You sit on a rock that may have once been the hill's shoulder. It's warm. It hums with sun. You watch as a girl dumps a basket into a trench, gives a little bow and says, "Sorry." When you ask why, she says, "The hill taught me how to whistle." Then she shrugs and keeps working. That's the vibe here. Vanishing isn't vandalism, it's evolution. There's even a saying carved into a nearby post. What is not needed can still be missed. You find yourself strangely moved. Another man tells you this is the 3rd hill they've removed. The first one blocked a wind tunnel that was important for goats. The second one made people's tea taste bitter. That might have been a joke, or a metaphor. He offers you a spoon of something called hill jam. You taste it. It's gritty, sweet, and probably not FDA approved. You like it anyway. As you wander farther, you come upon a small open space with a faded sign that reads, "Here stood the hill that forgot itself." It's just flat now. Grass has grown over the scar, but the land still seems confused, like it's waiting for someone to explain where the weight went. Children run across it, their games unconcerned. 2 boys roll tires. 1 girl builds a hill out of pebbles. A younger kid kicks it down, then apologizes and helps rebuild it. The cycle continues. You ask an elder if there's ever regret about removing what once was. He chuckles. Sometimes, but we carry it elsewhere. You realize then that nothing is truly gone here. Not mountains, not effort, not even this hill. It's just relocated, repurposed, rewritten into the next story. There's a whispered rumour that once the town tried to erase a hill too fast. They removed it over 3 days, dumped the soil by moonlight. But afterward, every map drawn of the area still showed it. Even satellite images. The hill was gone, but it kept being remembered. That, locals say, is what happens when you move something before it's ready. They now leave offerings before the first basket is taken. Candles, flowers, the occasional can of soda. Just in case. You find a basket resting on the edge of the current project. It's empty, waiting. You almost pick it up. Almost. But instead, you just sit beside it, press your palm into the soil, feel its grain, its give. You don't know where this dirt came from, or where it's going, but you understand the in-between. This hill, like every other part of this town, isn't disappearing. It's becoming. And somehow, that's heavier than if it had stayed. You leave the fading hill behind, feeling like you've just walked through someone's fading memory. The kind that doesn't disappear so much as dissolve into other things. Laughter, habits, the smell of breakfast. You breathe in deeply, and that's when you hear it. Soft at first, then louder, then unmistakable. Bells. Not grand, cathedral bells, not sharp, metal clangers announcing war or weddings. These are lighter, hollow, as if rung not for volume, but for feeling. You follow the sound, your steps echoing slightly now, because here, even the ground sounds different. You arrive at a chapel, or what's left of one. It leans slightly to the right, made from stacked earth and scavenged planks. There's no steeple, no stained glass, just 4 pillars and a sloped roof like a shrug. But at the top, swinging in the breeze, are the bells, dozens of them, all kinds. Tiny ones made from spoons and melted cans, mid-sized ones shaped like lanterns, a few that look suspiciously like repurposed hubcaps. They hang on cords, wires, vines, anything that sways. They're all different weights, but they ring the same. Software random, like someone whispering punctuation marks into the sky. A boy sits beneath them, holding a string tied to one of the smaller bells. Every few minutes he tugs it gently and listens. You ask what he's doing. Reminding it. You don't ask what of. Inside the chapel, there are no pews, just cushions, some embroidered, some threadbare. The walls are painted with what looks like fingerprints and basket-bottom stamps. No saints here, just silhouettes, carrying loads. Above the altar, not really an altar, more of a platform, you see a phrase burned into wood. The weight was shared, so was the sound. You sit on a cushion, someone offers you a drink, chamomile and cinnamon again. It tastes like dusk. An old woman lights a candle and rings a bell with a feather. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. Heavy things need soft noises. Historians still argue about these bells. Some claim they were added after the mountain was moved, as a way to mark effort with celebration. Others believe they predate everything, that the sound was what made the mountain light enough to carry in the first place. The fringe theory: the bells don't make noise, the wind does. You lean back and listen. Each ring seems to carry a memory, not yours, but close enough. One bell chimes like a laugh, another like a sigh. One sounds like the crunch of footsteps on gravel. You watch as a teen adds a new bell to the frame, a tiny ceramic teacup with a coin tied inside. He lifts it up, kisses the rim and hangs it near the top. "This one's for my uncle," he tells you. "He didn't move the mountain, but he fed the ones who did." That counts. Outside, children run by, trailing strings with tiny bells on the end. Not to announce themselves, but to make noise when they don't want to talk. You hear one jingling rapidly behind a goat. The goat seems unimpressed. Further down, you spot a structure labelled the Listening Tower. It's only a few feet tall, built entirely of baskets stacked atop one another with a bell at the top. Inside sits a book. You flip it open. Each page has a single entry, a time, a name, and a note. 3:22 p.m, Marisol, heard her father's voice in the wind. 6:45 a.m, unknown, wind said, keep going. 10:03 p.m, Hovey, thought it was just the goat, still counts. You write your name, leave the note blank. Outside the chapel the bell field grows. You hadn't noticed at first, too focused on the central ones, but beyond the main area, past a low stone wall, the ground is dotted with bell posts, each one planted with care, each holding a single sound maker. Some hang from tree branches, others from broomsticks, one from the curved handle of a shovel. A breeze rolls through and a wave of tones follows, gentle, uneven, heartfelt. It doesn't fill the air. It brushes it, like memory flicking your ear on its way out. You walk through the field slowly, reading the notes tied beneath some of the bells. This one rings when I doubt myself. Placed for my sister, still waiting for her to hear it. Hung this bell after my first basket. It's not loud, neither am I. At the edge of the field, you sit on a flat stone warmed by afternoon light. And finally, you let it in. The bells are not announcements, they're acknowledgements, not shouting what happened, just quietly confirming that it did. A man walks past, taps one bell gently and says, "That one hasn't rung in a while, might be ready soon." You ask him what happens when a bell rings without wind. He smiles. We listen harder. The sound of the bells fades behind you like a lullaby that doesn't want to end. It hums along the path, tugging at your sleeve as if asking you to stay. But ahead, something still awaits, quieter than silence, heavier than bells. You follow a winding trail that dips low, away from the rooftops, the bustle, the baskets. Here the air grows denser, cooler, and smells faintly of moss and old decisions. You've arrived at the river that stood still, except it isn't quite a river, not anymore. Once this was a steady current, carving through the valley, feeding fields, ferrying gossip. Now it barely moves, it rests, wide and shallow, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting a sky that seems not entirely committed to weather. The locals still call it a river. They even pretend it flows. But no one's seen it rush in years. A boy skipping stones tells you it got tired. You ask what from. He shrugs. Probably carrying the reflection of all our mess. Fair enough. Historians still argue whether the river's slow death was natural or caused by the mountain-moving efforts. Some claim the redirection of soil altered groundwater paths. Others blame a forgotten landslide upstream. The fringe theory, that the river, in an act of quiet protest, simply chose to stop. You stand at the bank and peer into its depths. You expect mud, maybe a lost flip-flop. Instead, you see clarity. Stones arranged like runes, a spoon, a shard of mirror, a single white feather slowly spiralling downward. The reflection of your own face seems unusually still, like it doesn't want to return your expression unless you commit to it. On the opposite shore sits a man in a folding chair. He holds a fishing rod. The line dips into water that hasn't twitched in half an hour. He waves. Catching anything, you ask? Mostly thoughts, he replies. A breeze lifts your collar, but the surface of the river doesn't react. It refuses to pretend. There's a story, half joke, half warning, that if you stare too long into the still water, you'll see your next regret. You give it 6 seconds, just to be sure. All you see is a beetle skating across like it's late for something. You walk upstream, pass a shrine built into the riverbank, a shelf of clay jars filled with folded notes, messages for the current. Most are hopeful. Carry this sadness somewhere nice. Wash my worry toward the sea. Tell the mountain I'm trying. You add one. Yours says nothing. Just a scribbled question mark. Further up, you come across a set of old stepping stones. Locals call them the memory walk, not because they're historic, but because you'll remember every misstep when you fall in. You manage to cross without slipping, barely. On the far side, a girl is painting water onto rocks with a brush made of twine. No pigment, just water. You ask why. She says, to remind the stones what it felt like. You sit nearby. This part of the river, if it can still be called that, is so still that dust settles on it. Occasionally someone clears it with a broom, like tidying a glass table. That too is sacred. Someone rides by on a bicycle strung with bells. They don't ring. The stillness swallows the sound before it arrives. You continue downstream, where the water gathers in a small basin, just deep enough to submerge your ankles. A bench waits at the edge, half sunk in sand. You sit. A woman beside you stirs the water with a stick. She says her mother used to bathe her here, back when the current could sweep away even a lie. Now, she says, it just holds them. You ask why she still comes. She dips her fingers in, lets the droplets fall from her hand like punctuation. Because not all rivers have to move, some just have to stay. A little boy throws a rock into the water and pouts when it makes no splash. It's like throwing at the sky, he says. His sister tells him to aim harder. He tells her she smells like goat. They argue. The water watches. You think of everything this town has carried. The baskets, the soil, the laughter, the hills, the straw king. And this river, this motionless mirror, feels like its anchor, the place where nothing is expected, where weight floats if only in thought. On your way out, you see a sign carved into the trunk of a tree leaning just far enough to get your attention. The words are soft, shallow, like they were whispered into the bark. Even the earth has to pause to remember what it used to hold. You pause too, then you walk on. You leave the river behind, still feeling its quiet settle in your ribs, as if your own breath has learned to flow slower. The trail back toward the heart of town takes you through an open stretch of dry grass and scattered stones. It's uneventful, until the earth drops. Just a few feet, but sudden, like a breath you didn't know you were holding. You're standing at the rim of what they call the hollow. The villagers don't advertise it. No signs, no tour groups, no enthusiastic teams explaining the history. It's not hidden, but it's not offered. You look down into it. A soft bowl in the earth may be the size of a plaza, shaped like a question someone asked very carefully. This is where the mountain used to be. Or rather, where the last piece of it was. Before the baskets, before the shortcuts, before the jam and the shrine and the straw king and the training hills. This was the core, the starting point, the heart of the weight. Now, it's a crater filled with air. You descend slowly. The path in is carved, but not formal, just dirt that's grown used to company. Inside the hollow, your footsteps sound louder. Not like echoes, more like permission. A kind of acoustic honesty you only get in spaces that have been emptied slowly. The grass is sparse. The dirt, fine and powdery. Every few feet there's a rock too big to move, left like punctuation marks in a sentence no one finished writing. At the centre of the hollow sits a single basket. Woven tight, reinforced, still holding one final scoop of dirt. No one's touched it in years. You circle it. The air here feels dense, not heavy, thick, like a library with no books but all the memories. You sit, and it gets weirder. Sound behaves differently in the hollow. Your exhale is louder, your thoughts sharper. Somewhere above a bird cries and it echoes like a memory of crying, not the real thing. There's a local phrase carved into one of the remaining stones. The hollow is louder because it once was full. You lie down. The sky rolls gently above you, soft blue and slightly cracked. You wonder how many baskets it took, how many steps, how many backs bent in rhythm to remove a mountain from this bowl and scatter it into markets and roads and rooftop ovens. Historians still argue whether the hollow is truly the original centre. Some say the mountain was never here. It was above, to the west, near where the bells now hang. Others say this hole wasn't carved by baskets at all, but by a sinkhole, and the villagers pretended they moved it, just to feel control. One fringe theory? The hollow is an illusion. You could almost believe it. It's too perfect, too quiet, too cinematic. You rise and walk its curve. At one end, a small platform holds a guest book. It's more a pile of papers held down by a stone shaped like a heart. Visitors have written things that don't make sense until you read them twice. My father emptied this place. Now, I fill it with footsteps. I came to see the missing, found something I wasn't looking for. What if the mountain still remembers? There's a child's drawing too, a smiling stick figure under a speech bubble that says, "I helped." You believe them. A woman appears near the edge. She doesn't wave, just stands and watches. You wave. She nods once as if to say, "You get it now." She walks away. You sit again, tracing your finger through the dirt. You don't write anything. You don't need to. In this place, even silence leaves a mark. Eventually you rise and brush the dust from your clothes. But not all of it. Some of it sticks. Some of it always sticks. On your way out, you pass the final stone near the edge. The carving is clean, careful, reverent. We did not remove the mountain. We gave it more places to be. You look once more into the hollow, and it looks back. You leave the hollow slowly, like stepping away from someone who's still talking in your head. The ground underfoot feels different now. Not because it's softer, but because you're aware of it. You're aware of all of it. Every rock, every path, every clump of dirt is part of the mountain you've been walking through this whole time. But you're not done yet. The path rises one final time, not steep, just persistent, until you reach a ridge with no sign, no shrine, no ceremony, just a view. And suddenly you understand what the elders meant when they said, "The town didn't move the mountain. The mountain became the town." You look out across rooftops pieced together from old tin and newer dreams. The winding trails, the leaning fences, the bells in the breeze, the painted stones, the shortcut cutting through the land like an idea that refused to take no for an answer. All of it, came from what used to be a single mass of earth. One stubborn chunk of mountain that dared to sit in the wrong place. And they moved it. But they didn't erase it. They rearranged it, rewrote it, spread its pieces across time and labour and rhythm and jokes. That's what stuns you most. Not the weight they carried, but the lightness they found in carrying it. You sit on a bench made from 2 baskets and a plank. Someone has carved a face into the backrest. It's smiling, smugly. You assume it's the Straw King. Again, you listen. There are no cars, no horns, just the distant thump of a drum. someone laughing, a goat having a disagreement with gravity. This is not a town built on a mountain, it is a town built from one, and every corner remembers. The hill that trained children, the shortcut born from spite, the bell that sings when no one's around, the river that stood still, the shrine to the basket that started it all, the dust that still tells time in a language only the wind speaks. You close your eyes, and the mountain doesn't vanish. It expands. It spreads across your senses, not towering anymore, not intimidating, just present. In the air, the scent of tamarind and cracked stone, the warmth of soil still resting in someone's palm, the hum of woven fibres pulled tight to carry something impossible, again and again and again. You hear a child run past shouting, "That was my dirt," and someone shout back, "Then carry it better next time." A crow calls once, loud, then immediately apologises by flapping off. You breathe, and in that breath you feel the town rise with you. Not fast, not loud, but fully. They moved the mountain. And you believe it now, not because of the history books or the stones or the basket still waiting to be filled, but because you feel it. In your feet, in your chest, in the dust that won't quite leave your skin. Because once you've stepped into a place that moved the earth with patience and jokes and cinnamon tea, you don't leave clean, you leave carrying. So now let the weight settle gently. The last echoes of footsteps fade behind you, soft as brushed sand. The breeze, slow and steady, passes through your hair, through the folds of a basket left out for tomorrow. You sit again on that ridge. No movement now, just the stillness earned from witnessing movement done right. The bells chime once. Not for you, just because. You watch the sun drift lower, casting gold across rooftops that used to be rocks, across paths carved from choices made with tired hands and hopeful hearts. The whole valley glows like a secret that never needed hiding. You lean back, your eyes grow heavy. In your mind, the mountain still moves. Not fast, not loudly, but with rhythm, with grace. Basket by basket. And so do you. You carry this place now, not in your arms, but in your breath. And maybe tomorrow you'll see a hill and wonder what it could become if only someone tried. But for now, stay right here. Let the wind settle. Let the dust rest. Let the last basket sit empty, just for tonight.